first day of filming, what was our first day? I think it was in the character of Dan Kane's apartment when we were looking for Rufus because he had gone missing. That was our very first day. But also, even before we started filming, we rehearsed for 3 weeks. And if you know anything about movies, you know we don't rehearse. You usually show up on the set and you start working and you work on the scene. But for whatever reason, because Stuart was from the theater, he wanted to rehearse the movie, which I think is one of the reasons that the movie is as good as it is that we had our characters really dialed in with one another. And the material was really organized and dialed in, and our relationship and our chemistry with one another we had been working on for a long time, even before we started filming, so it made it feel more real. I actually think they don't mix up so well together because I think that most people aren't very good at doing it. Re-Animator is a great comedy horror because I think the stability and the foundation has to be there first of the horror with the comedy layer on top. And a lot of filmmakers do the comedy first and then they put horror elements in, and I don't think that works. If you go back and you think about the greatest horror comedies, the ones that really work have the horror at the foundation and at the base first, and then the layer of the comedy is on top. It's too hard to do it. And distributors and salespeople and studios shy away from that because there's not enough people that know how to do it very well. But for whatever reason, Stuart knew what he was doing. You know, he shocked us and it was horrible what happened, and the horror is so extreme that it's almost like the comedy is a release. It's like a release of the horror that you're watching. And it's just really hard for people to marry those two together. There's another horror comedy that I really love called Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And I think that also really works very well because it's very funny. But there's some horrible, horrible things that happen. And you have to put the accent and the foundation on the scary and the horror things that happen first. And so I just think it's really difficult to get creatively correct. He's an uncompromising artist, Stuart Gordon. He always wanted to do things his way. You would even say to him, "Oh, I'd like to try this," or "I'd like to do this," but he had in his mind how you should play the character. And I used to say to him, "If you could play every character in this movie, Stuart, you would." And he's like, No, it's your character, it's your character. But he was very proactive in sort of managing us and how he wanted us to play all of our parts. Very specific and very detail oriented. I would say that about him. I mean, look, I was very vulnerable in that movie, right? I think my character was very strong and very smart, and that's why I like Meg. But also she had some horrific things to go through. None of it scared me, by the way. I wasn't frightened by the material or what it was doing. It was also very funny, and sort of a visual pun on, the head. Just sort of, it was a crazy scene. I think it's something that sticks with people. It was very hard to film when we did it, but it's very memorable and people talk to me about it all the time, so I'm very proud of it. I mean, I have specific scenes that I like more than others. I think I really love the scenes where I have more tender moments with Bruce Abbott's character, Dan Kane, and there's a moment when he comes back to the house after everything has happened that's so horrible, and my father kicks him out of the school, and my father, I don't know what's happened to him, but I know that he's not the same anymore. And then he comes, Bruce Abbott's character comes back to the house, and I say to him, you should go away, transfer to another school. And, then, I don't know, it could be that moment where I'm going to forgive everything that happened. And then I say, I tried to hate you. I wanted so much to hate you, because I don't hate him. And there's a moment there when we really could be together, and we could go off into the sunset and forget everything that happened. And then my father comes in and captures me and takes me in that's like my last real moment as Meg, hoping for the future. So that's probably my favorite scene for me as an actor in the film.
So he wants to bring up this really famous picture that goes around the internet, and he wants to know like more context about the image, like who took the picture, what was going on.
Oh, I don't remember really. I think we were just goofing around. It has become a famous photo. Look, we didn't know the movie was going to be as long remembered as it is when we were doing the movie. And I think we should have taken more pictures because we only really have a few. And that picture is just sort of very casual. We're on the set, we're having fun and really enjoying each other and goofing around. And, it was that moment. I'm sure we had a set photographer taking a few pictures, but I don't remember who that person was, unfortunately. Yeah. Well, when the movie first came out, I remember talking to my agent and saying, oh, the movie got great reviews by Pauline Kael and by Roger Ebert. Oh, I've arrived. This is going to be great. This is going to do great things for my career. And my agent said, Barbara, it's a low-budget horror movie. It's nothing. And wow, that really deflated me. The movie has grown in its cult status over the years. So when did I finally realize that it was as popular? Maybe like 20 years ago. It took, I'd say 20 years for people to go, wow, that's a really fantastic movie. And now, even 40 years later, people say, wow, this is a cult classic. So it's taken many, many, many years for people to realize its value and how strong a debut it was for an emerging filmmaker. So amazing that you asked that question, because originally I was supposed to be the bride in Bride of Re-Animator, in the second one. Stuart Gordon was supposed to direct it, and he had written a script with Dennis Paoli. His agent at the time said, oh no, that is beneath you to do a sequel. Don't do a sequel. Which was the worst advice that you could give to somebody, because, well, then Brian Usna had made so much money off the first one, because that was his movie, that he said, well, we have to make a second one. And then he said, I'll just film your script. And Stuart said, no, you can't film my script. That's my script. You have to write your own. So Brian wrote his own script, and for whatever reason, then didn't include me, which is fine. I'm sad that he didn't. But to this day, I'm sad. But it was bad advice at the time. Like, I don't think that Stuart's agent knew what he was saying when he told him that. So yes, I would love to be in a sequel to Re-Animator. And I do think we've been talking about it. I don't know if Brian is going to allow us to do it, but if we were to make a sequel of Re-Animator, I think it should be like the Jamie Lee Curtis Halloween, where they picked up after the first movie what happened all those years later. She had PTSD, remember, in the movie? Yes. I think David Gordon Green directed that. That movie really worked. It was like, forget all the other sequels, start over, what happens. To me, that's what we should do. But I don't know if that will ever happen. I don't know. We'll see. Look, Re-Animator is also public domain. It's it's H.P. Lovecraft. So you could make any story about Re-Animator and do something else. And there are people that are working, they have made other Re-Animators. I mean, they're not as successful, but it's always there. It's always looming that we could do another one. Will we get to? I don't know. But yes, my answer to you is I would love to do another one. Well, I just hope they wouldn't use any CGI for anything. It was all practical effects. And there was a time maybe 10 years ago when CGI was very popular and they were using a lot of techniques in films. And then after a while, the horror fans are very, tried and true and very dedicated people, and they don't like that very much. So now there's a sensibility to go back to practical effects. So we're doing that, and nobody likes AI. So we don't want any of that. We just want real stuff. We don't want actresses who are fake AI characters. We want real people. So I'm very proud of the fact that I was part of a movie that is all practical effects. So what could be improved on it? I don't know. On that film, I don't know. I don't see anything that can be improved. I think it's kind of a perfect movie. Oh, well, this is my favorite festival. Don't tell the other festivals, but this is my favorite one. I love the location. I love the fans. And I love that it's been around for how long? 50 years has Sitges been around?
58 now.
58?
Yeah,
That's insane.
Yes.
Yeah, I always say when people in America, they say, where are you going? I'm going to Sitges. And they say, what is Sitges? I say, it's like the Cannes Film Festival for horror films. It's very sophisticated, it's very posh, it's very elegant here. And, you guys treat us with such respect. And this is my favorite place to come. And I'm always honored to be asked back. Great. I mean, I've mostly worked in independent cinema. I've done a few studio movies and I've done some television, but most of the filmmakers I work with are their own voices. They're very unique. It's independent cinema, so it's really from each individual person and who they are. Jackson Stewart for Beyond the Gates was, very unique in his style and what he wanted to do. And I did a movie with Spider One, who's Rob Zombie's brother, recently called Little Bites. Very intuitive filmmaker from his own sensibilities. And I like working with people that have single-minded visions like that. And there's another movie playing at Sitges called Every Heavy Thing with Mickey Reese. He's the director and also a very unique filmmaker. So I love working with people that, they want to do their own thing and they're very unique. Well, that's an interesting question. There's probably two. I loved my role in the movie From Beyond. I really, that was so long ago, but I feel like I had a really great part. There's more great parts for men still in the film industry than there are for women, but that part was, very strong because I played a doctor and a psychiatrist, and then I had to sort of, save the day. Then it became sort of a femme fatale, sort of reorganizing my sexuality. And then I go crazy at the end of the movie. So there was so many things to do, but there's also another more recent movie that's not as well known called Jacob's Wife. I think that played here a couple of years ago, maybe, Jacob's Wife.
Yeah.
It was during the pandemic and I wasn't able to come over for that. But that's probably my favorite movie that I've ever done, even though it's a smaller film. I really love that part and what it says about a long-term marriage. And I always wanted to play a classic character, so I got to play a vampire in that film. So I'd say that's probably my favorite role. I don't think of myself like that, but thank you for saying it. I love working in movies. I love playing characters. It's something I wanted to do from the time I was very little. And I still think it's as hard today to make movies, even if I'm a so-called icon, than it was years ago. I still struggle to make all of the movies that I've made. And even the filmmakers that I work with, they struggle to get movies off the ground. It's the life of an artist. It's still a constant struggle, and you just have to keep doing it and keep working as hard as you can to make your art. So I think just being a cultural icon is just having staying power and just not stopping, not thinking when times get tough or it's hard to make something. It's easy to give up, but you just can't give up. You just have to keep going. And I've often said I want to be the Betty White of horror, if you know Betty White, this old actress from America. I'd like to keep playing as many roles as possible and keep going with my legacy and playing grandmother parts. So I hope I get to stay as long as possible. No, I'm really careful about my legacy now, and a lot of things I turned down. There's a couple of movies that got away. I was up for the part in Candyman. I auditioned for Candyman and I didn't get that part. I would have liked to have done that. There's been a couple of movies that I've done that I wish that I hadn't. When the movie came out, I was like, it's not so good. Because I work with a lot of young filmmakers still, I'm very careful about the roles that I pick. And as I've gotten older, I'm also, really, really careful. So I'd say I turn down more movies than I do. But I don't think there's ever been a movie that I turned down that I've said, oh, I wish I did that film. No, I don't have one. But maybe I'll come back next year and I'll have a different answer for you. I don't know. Probably a strong story of relationships. I'm really into the inner workings of people and why they do the things they do. And I think the best films really showcase human nature and explain to us who we are. So I don't have a specific answer for you, but I think something about human nature and understanding people. So then I will go back to Jacob's Wife and say, if you haven't watched that film, watch that one.